scoop. My wife took the kids to Minneapolis, and I'm up late because I still have the 5-year-old, but I got her to bed pretty early. So I thought I would sneak into my studio and do this little episode if I can muster the energy and pretend like I have caffeine in my system, which I really don't because it's pushing midnight. Anyhow, let's do this thing, right? This is Colonel Elijah Wesley Graham Sparkman continuously cranking out the chart-topping smash hits, some you know and some you love. Welcome back to another episode. Today I'm going to be discussing the UREI Mod ONE console from 1974 that I was so blessed to be able to inherit. This board, what is it? Why am I using it? Is it necessary to have a huge piece of old analog outboard gear in your studio in 2023? Does it actually give you some sort of benefit when everything is super advanced in the digital domain? These questions and more I hope to answer in the coming moments on Graham Sparkman Music Production. So when I was a kid, I know it's I'm a sucker for nostalgia. So my family owned a radio station. They had the board in there. It was in it was in voice tracking room. So it was a room situated to where they could go in, and each of these modules was assigned to a different audio source. So they would have a microphone coming in. One would be a turntable, one a cart machine, one reel-to-reel tape machine, etc. And so the whole point behind this was they could come in and introduce songs and have that be recorded, pre-recorded. That would go into what was called an automation system, so they could go on vacation or elsewhere. Their recordings would be introducing songs in their absence. So it was cutting-edge technology for the time. They needed a board to be able to route all of these different signal paths. And so Bob Hell, the station engineer, ordered this board in the 73, 74. But he took a teeny tiny room and he actually ordered all of the parts for these speakers, which were massive. I mean, you could have powered an AC/DC concert at that time period and broadcasted the signal over 3 counties with the wattage that these speakers could have put out. There's the subs and the tweeters and the cabinets. Bob, I think, built all this himself and soldered it and wired it all together in this tiny room that was smaller than a bedroom. This board was at the helm of the ship, the control center, routing all the signals, as I said, from the turntable to the cart machine, the reel-to-reel, etc. And this is where my dad, my uncle, my grandfather sat in front of this board for countless hours over weeks and years and even decades to do voice tracking. And when I would walk into the room, I'd see the board lit up and think it was an awesome Christmas tree. And there's a blurry picture of my dad in front of this board in the 2000s. There's a computer monitor above him. That's how we know that this board was probably shortly thereafter being phased out because they had gone digital with the automation at that point. So it went into the basement, and it went through floods and disasters and fires and sprinkler systems going off and water saturating into the board. And I don't even know how my uncle heroically salvaged this thing out of multiple natural disasters. But he did. I was building this studio up in 2020, actually, and he said, is there anything down in that basement of the radio station that you might be interested in? I thought about that old board. Now, I didn't know that it was a UREI board. In fact, I knew about UREI after I got into music production, but I had no idea that this board that I grew up around was a UREI board. He sent me some pictures, and in the mix, there was 50 pictures, and in the mix was this board. And it was covered under about 50 pounds of dust and mold and probably asbestos.
Graham, here's a look at the Mod ONE. I would think that would come off. Used to be green, but as you can see, most of the switches are in good shape. That one's missing, and that one's broken off. And I would think that this could be cleaned off. Here's a look at the top. Open up the hood.
And I said, I kind of be interested in that board. Can you send it up to me? So I started cleaning it myself and just got half the board cleaned. But one thing I just thought was the coolest thing was that this board is green and it's got this 70s wood paneling. And then I looked in the bottom right-hand corner and I saw the UREI logo. This is after I got it up here in Duluth, Minnesota. And I just about passed out because without just nerding out on y'all, Bill Putnam in the 50s started the UREI company. Well, it was in those days, if you needed gear, you built it yourself because it wasn't available for leveling amps, compressors, whatever. So Bill built preamps that he was using was the 610A and then the 610B. He came out of the RCA world where everything was tube-driven. The compressors that he was working on at that time would have been under the Teletronics label, so the famous LA2As, opto compressors. But then when he got into the world of solid state, he realized that the attack times could be so much faster. So he got into these FET compressors, and he started working on the early designs for the 1170s, or what we would come to know as the 1176 dynamic compressors. And those compressors, in particular, the LA2A and the 1176, have been used on a gajillion recordings. So UREI went on to do speakers and a bunch of different audio gear throughout the 70s. In the early 80s, they did a partnership with JBL, and eventually JBL bought them out. Then Bill's sons came along, Bill Putnam Jr., and bought the company back, started Universal Audio.
Well, it's almost like there's no end to what music is. I mean, it's an artistic expression going back to when humans used to bang on logs and howl at the moon. It captures the very essence of who we are, who we want to be, and that's a source of endless fascination to me. My dad started UA in the late 50s. It was motivated by the needs he saw in his own studio, and there wasn't equipment out there. Gear that we've made over the years has gone beyond just documenting performances to shaping the very sounds of records, and it's been used on some of the best records ever made. We've studied classic gear from companies like Neve, Manley, API, Ampex, Studer, and Fender to get to the soul of what makes it all tick. We'll do whatever it takes to get the quality that we demand. With Apollo interfaces and UAD hardware, you've got access to the best recording gear ever made, either on your desktop or in your rack. At Universal Audio, we haven't taken the easy road. We believe that music is more than a sequence of captured notes. We want all of the sound, because that's where the music is.
So I picked up an original manual for this board, and one thing that they boasted, the reason it's called the Mod One, mod is short for modular, is that each of these modules are completely customizable and can be reconfigured in any way to support the future needs of your studio. So what they boasted was, at the time, is that you could put this in your studio and reconfigure it if you got new equipment in the future. Little did they know I would take them up on their word and be doing this in 2023. So this all comes full circle. I can't wait to tell you all about this. I'm just like truly geeking out to the max here. But the Apollo Twin that I have is a universal unit. I got the idea when I was having this board restored. I talked to my technician, Peter, and I said, wouldn't it be cool if we could integrate my new Universal Audio Apollo into the board itself? And he thought, we're going to have like machined metal stuff fabricated from scratch. And I thought, yeah, but if we could pull it off, man, it would just like be the coolest thing in the world. So we took measurements, and it was this huge process. I actually went to my local store and picked up sheet metal, but I was actually in Peter's shop, and I was holding the Apollo, and we were pushing it up against like this metal sand belt, sparks shooting everywhere to try to shave off a few millimeters to get it to countersink into the board. I actually took paint chips to a local paint shop and had them match it specifically with a computer software program to get the paint for the center panel to match up to that of the other modules. It was this huge labor of love. But the coolest thing in the world is that it's a single company over the span of the 50s until right now. It's completely set up to be both analog, so you get that sonic thumbprint of the analog vibe, because I actually have audio flowing through this, and I'm practically using the VU meters. But then you have the modern A to D and D to A conversion going on, as well as mic pre's, etc. That's in the Apollo. So it's like truly, when we talk hybrid, this is like truly the hybrid concept, and I'm so blessed to have inherited this board. And if that's not cool enough, Peter, my technician, got this idea to take a recording that my grandfather, Ernest Sparkman, did on this board in the 70s, introducing a song, have an internal MP3 player so that you would hear Ernest voice anytime you flip a switch. So it's the ghost of Ernest is living in this board 24/7. So I can flip this over and you'll hear a loop of my grandfather introducing songs, which is internal to the board. How cool is that? Let's hear a sample of that.
Broadcasting from the mountains of Virginia to the bluegrass of Kentucky from WSGS Radio in Hazard. Broadcasting around the clock 24 hours a day from WSGS in Hazard, Kentucky. Broadcasting from the mountains of Virginia to the bluegrass of Kentucky from WSGS Radio in Hazard.
Thank you for hanging out with me, folks, into the wee hours of the morning. It's like going on 1 a.m. I'm exhausted. I'm going to go to bed. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. This is Colonel Elijah Wesley Graham Sparkman for Graham Sparkman Music Production, signing off, wishing you and yours a pleasant evening.
All this light, all this love, all this life, it's here right now.